"I can carry them all," the cowboy said, after seeing the widow struggle with her sleeping children. Winter came early that year, the kind that did not announce itself with snow at first, but with silence. The land went still before it went white. The air sharpened. Breath learned to linger. The road cut through the valley like an old scar, half buried, half forgotten, its edges crusted with frost that never quite melted even at noon. Fence posts leaned inward as if tired of standing. Somewhere far off, a river moved under ice, slow and patient, learning how to wait. Ethan Cole rode alone. He had been riding alone for a long time. His horse's breath rose in pale clouds, each one dissolving before it could drift away. The saddle creaked softly beneath him, leather, cold stiff. His coat was heavy with age and use, the seams rubbed thin at the shoulders, the wool collar darkened by years of weather and sweat. The brim of his hat was rimmed with frost. He didn't rush. Cowboys like him never did. Not because they had nowhere to be, but because they had learned that hurrying didn't change what waited at the end. The sun hung low and pale, as if unsure whether it still belonged to this sky. Ethan had just finished a long run south of the ridge, cattle accounted for, fences checked, nothing stolen, nothing broken, which in winter felt almost suspicious. Winter always took something. If not livestock, then time. If not time, then warmth. If not warmth, then people. He was thinking about turning back when he saw her. At first he thought it was just a bundle by the road, a dark shape against the snow-dusted ground. Something abandoned. Then the shape shifted. Barely. Enough. Ethan pulled the reins without thinking. The horse slowed, then stopped, hooves crunching softly against frozen dirt. The world felt suddenly louder. His breath, the horse's breath, the faint whistle of wind threading through dry grass. He slid down from the saddle and stood there a moment, boots planted, hand resting near his coat as if it needed anchoring. "Hell," he murmured, not loud enough to carry. She was kneeling near the wagon ruts, her back to the wind, her shoulders curved inward like she was trying to fold herself smaller. A thin shawl covered her head, dusted with snow, the fabric too light for the cold. One arm wrapped around a child pressed against her chest. Another child leaned against her side, asleep or close to it. A third, no older than 4, sat slumped at her feet, head tilted back, mouth open in the careless trust of exhaustion. Children, sleeping, in winter. Ethan's jaw tightened. He took a step closer, then another, slow, careful, as if the cold itself might startle them. The woman looked up. Her eyes were hollow with tiredness, not empty, but worn thin. The kind of tired that didn't come from a single bad night, but from too many that blurred together. Her cheeks were red and cracked from windburn. Her lips were pale. A strand of dark hair had escaped the shawl and frozen against her temple. She didn't speak. She didn't beg. She only pulled the child in her arms a little closer, instinctive, protective, even though her own hands were trembling. "I ain't here to frighten you," Ethan said quietly. His voice sounded rough in the cold, like it had been scraped down to its bones. The woman studied him, eyes flicking to the horse, the rifle slung across the saddle, the shape of him, broad, weathered, unmistakably alone. She swallowed. "They're just resting," she said at last. Her voice was hoarse, worn, still steady. Ethan nodded once. "I can see that." A gust of wind moved through the valley, cutting sharp and sudden. The smallest child stirred, a faint whimper escaping before sleep reclaimed him. The woman bent instinctively, pressing her forehead to the child's hair, murmuring something too soft to hear. Ethan looked at the sky. The light was already thinning. Night came fast in winter, faster than mercy. "You far from where you're headed?" he asked. She hesitated, just a beat too long. "Was," she said, "before." That was answer enough. Ethan crouched slowly, bringing himself level with her without crowding. His knees creaked in protest. Everything creaked in winter. "They won't last the night out here," he said gently. Not as a warning, just a truth. Her jaw tightened. "I know." Silence stretched between them, heavy, honest. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded blanket, thick, wool patched at the corners. He held it out, not moving closer. She stared at it like it might vanish. "Take it," he said. "Don't cost me nothing but warmth I can spare." After a moment she accepted it, fingers brushing his by accident. Her hands were ice cold, not metaphorically, truly cold. She wrapped it around the children first. Always the children first. Ethan watched the way she moved, careful, practiced, the way someone did when every motion had consequences. "How many?" he asked, though he already knew. "3," she said. "All that's left." The words settled into the cold like stones dropped into water. Ethan exhaled slowly. "My place is about a mile west," he said. "Ain't much, but there's a stove, walls, a roof that keeps the wind honest." She looked up sharply. Fear flickered there, and something else. Hope's quieter cousin, caution. "I can't," she started. Ethan shook his head once. "Not asking for nothing. Not now. Not later." She studied him again, longer this time. The wind picked up. Snow began to fall, not heavy, but deliberate, the kind that didn't stop once it started. The oldest child shifted in her arms, eyes fluttering open. He looked at Ethan, then at the horse. "Ma?" he whispered. She pressed her cheek to his. "It's all right." Ethan stood, decision settling in his bones like gravity. "I can carry them all," he said. She blinked. "What?" "Them," he repeated, already moving. "I can take 2. You take the other. Ain't far." She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Pride was a luxury Winter had already taken from her. Ethan lifted the first child, light as a bundle of sticks, breathing shallow but steady. Then the second. He balanced them easily, like he'd done this before, maybe not with children, but with burdens. The woman gathered the third child to her chest, standing carefully, legs stiff from the cold. Snow fell harder now. They moved together down the road, toward a faint line of smoke rising against the darkening sky. Behind them, the valley closed in. Ahead, light. The cabin stood at the edge of the trees like it had grown there by accident and decided to stay. Squat, weather-beaten. Smoke curled from the chimney in a thin, stubborn line, fighting the wind the way everything did out here. Ethan pushed the door open with his shoulder. Warmth rushed out to meet them, not gentle, but shocking. The kind that stung cold skin and made muscles ache as they remembered what comfort felt like. The woman stepped inside, hesitating only long enough to make sure the children didn't slip from her arms. The door closed behind them with a soft, final thud. The room was small, 1 table. 2 chairs, a narrow bed pushed against the wall, a stove that had seen better years but still burned true. The air smelled of iron, wood smoke, and something faintly bitter, coffee maybe, brewed too long and left forgotten. Ethan set the children down carefully on the bed, arranging them the way a man does when he's watched illness and exhaustion enough times to know what matters. Heads elevated, limbs covered, boots off. The youngest stirred, a small sound escaping him. "Shh," the woman whispered, brushing her lips against his forehead. Ethan straightened, rolling his shoulders once like he was shaking off something heavier than cold. "You can set him there," he said, nodding toward the chair near the stove. "Closest spot to the heat." She did. The child didn't wake. For a moment they just stood there. The stove crackled. Snow tapped against the window like knuckles. She pulled the shawl from her head slowly, as if revealing her face required permission. Her hair fell in dark waves, flattened in places by cold and worry. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes that no rest would erase completely. "My name's Mara," she said quietly, as if the room itself needed to know. Ethan nodded. Ethan. No last name. They both understood that kind of introduction. He moved to the stove, poured water into a kettle, set it on the heat. His movements were economical. Nothing wasted. Winter made a man efficient or dead. "They eaten today?" he asked. She hesitated. "A little. This morning." He grunted softly. Not judgment. Calculation. He ladled stew from a pot that had clearly been stretched beyond its original intentions, added water, stirred, seasoned without measuring. The smell thickened, filling the cabin with something close to hope. Mara watched him from the corner of her eye, never fully turning her back. "Your husband?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice neutral. She flinched, just slightly. "Gone," she said. "Since last winter." He didn't ask how. Winter answered enough questions on its own. They ate in silence. The children woke one by one, groggy but obedient, spoon-fed warmth and salt, and whatever else kept a body going. Ethan pretended not to notice how Mara watched every bite like it might be taken away. When the last bowl was scraped clean, the oldest boy looked up at Ethan. "Are you a cowboy?" he asked. Ethan smiled, not wide but real. "Reckon I am." The boy nodded, satisfied, and leaned back against his mother. Night deepened outside. The wind howled louder now, testing the seams of the cabin, looking for weakness. Snow piled against the door. Ethan threw another log on the fire. "You can have the bed," he said. "All of you." Mara shook her head immediately. "No, we can sleep on the floor. We've—" "Bed," he repeated, firm but not unkind. "Floor pulls the cold up through your bones. Ain't negotiable." She studied him, then nodded once. "And you?" she asked. "I'll manage." He always did. Later, when the children slept, tangled together like they'd learned safety and closeness, Mara sat at the table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee she hadn't yet touched. "You don't know us," she said softly. "I know Winter," Ethan replied. "That's not the same." "Close enough." She almost smiled. Almost. Silence returned. Different now. Less sharp. Outside something moved. Footsteps? No. Just wind shifting snow off the roof. Still, Ethan's gaze drifted to the window, instinctive. "They were chasing us," Mara said suddenly. Ethan didn't look at her. "Who?" She swallowed. "Men. From the town east of here. Said my husband owed them. Said debts don't die with the dead." Ethan's jaw set. "They see you?" "Yes." "How close?" "Close enough to count the children." That settled something in him. He stood, reached for his coat. "I'll check the perimeter," he said. Mara's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "I know." He paused at the door, glanced back once. "You hear anything that don't sound like the wind?" He said, "You bar that door and stay quiet." She nodded. Outside the cold bit harder. The moon was a thin blade behind clouds. Snow swallowed sound. Ethan moved slow, careful, reading the land the way some men read books. Tracks, faint, old, and newer ones crossing them. He followed them until they disappeared into drifted white. When he returned, his breath was heavy, his expression set. Inside, the children slept on. Mara looked up at him. "They're not here," he said. "Not tonight." Her shoulders sagged. Relief didn't look gentle on her. It looked painful. She stood suddenly, crossed the room, and before he could step back, she pressed her forehead against his chest. Not an embrace, a surrender. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan stood very still. Outside, winter kept watch. Morning came the way winter mornings always did, quiet, pale, and unearned. Light slipped through the frost-rimmed window in thin bands, settling across the floor like something cautious, unsure whether it was welcome. The fire in the stove had burned low, but not out. Ethan stirred before the cold could remind him where he was. He sat up slowly, joints stiff, boots still on. Habit. Outside nights taught a man not to fully undress unless he trusted the walls around him. From the bed came the sound of breathing, 4 rhythms, uneven but steady. Mara lay curled on her side, one arm draped protectively over the youngest child, her body forming a barrier between them and the rest of the world. In sleep, she looked younger, softer, less like someone who had learned how quickly things could be taken. Ethan stood quietly and fed the stove. The wind had settled overnight, but the cold had deepened. Snow lay thick outside, smoothing the land into something deceptively peaceful. Tracks from the night before were gone, buried, erased. Winter was good at that. It hid evidence, made lies look clean. He poured water, set coffee to boil, cut bread with a careful hand. The smell filled the cabin slowly, nudging the air awake. Mara stirred when the kettle whistled. Her eyes opened sharply at first, fear flaring before recognition softened it. "Morning," Ethan said. She sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around the children. "Morning." They spoke softly, as if winter itself were listening. The children woke one by one. The oldest, Sam, she'd said last night, helped with the younger ones without being asked. Another thing Winter taught early. They ate, again, in silence. But it was a different silence now, not empty, not afraid, just waiting. After, Ethan stepped outside to chop wood. The sound of the axe carried clean and sharp through the cold air. Each strike echoed against the trees, steady and sure. Mara watched from the doorway, the youngest perched on her hip. Snow fell again, light this time, drifting sideways. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "Most days," Ethan replied. She nodded. "Seems lonely." He paused, resting the axe head against the stump. "Lonely's quieter than most alternatives." She considered that. By midday the sky darkened again. Heavy clouds rolled in low and mean. Snow thickened, the kind that didn't stop for days. Mara stood at the table, mending a tear in one of the children's coats with thread Ethan hadn't realized he still had. Her hands moved with practiced care. "How long you planning to stay?" Ethan asked, not looking at her. She stopped sewing. "I don't know," she said honestly. "We were heading west, toward my sister. But the roads—" She trailed off. "Winter don't care about plans," he said. "No," she agreed. "It never did." That afternoon, a sound reached them through the storm. Hooves, faint, distant, but there. Ethan went still. His hand rested lightly on the rifle by the door. Mara's eyes met his. Fear returned, quick and sharp. "Stay here," he said. He stepped outside, closing the door softly behind him. The snow muffled everything. Visibility was poor. He scanned the tree line, the rise beyond the creek. Then he saw them. 2 riders, shapes moving slow through the white, not hurried. That was what worried him. Ethan raised his rifle, not aiming yet, just visible. The riders stopped. One lifted a hand. "Afternoon," the man called. His voice carried too easily. "We're looking for a woman and her children. Passed through here yesterday." Ethan didn't answer right away. Snow clung to his lashes. His breath fogged the air. "Plenty of folks pass through," he said at last. "Winter takes most of 'em somewhere else." The rider chuckled. "She's got dark hair, 3 kids, widowed, owes money." "Everyone owes something," Ethan said. "Ain't all of it collected by men." The second rider shifted, restless. "You seen her or not?" the first asked. Ethan's voice stayed even. "No." Silence stretched. Snow fell harder. Finally the rider nodded. "If you do," he said, "you tell her debts don't disappear just 'cause the ground freezes." Ethan didn't move. The riders turned away, disappearing into the storm the way threats often did, unfinished. When Ethan went back inside, Mara stood rigid by the table. The children huddled behind her. "They'll come back," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. Her voice trembled. "Then we can't stay." Ethan looked at the window, at the white swallowing the world. "You can," he said. "For now." "For how long?" He met her gaze. "As long as winter lasts." Winter settled in like it meant to stay. Days blurred together beneath a sky the color of old tin. Snow piled against the cabin walls until the lower windows vanished entirely, turning the world into a narrow strip of gray light and shadow. The creek froze solid, its song trapped beneath ice. Even the wind seemed to tire of itself, dropping into long, mournful silences between sudden, angry bursts. They fell into a rhythm because they had to. Ethan split wood every morning until his shoulders burned and his breath came out ragged. Mara cooked what little they had left, stretching meals the way only someone who had done it before could, adding water, scraping the pot, saving crumbs like they were currency. The children learned the cabin's corners, its sounds, its moods. They stopped asking when they could leave. Winter had already answered that. At night they sat close to the stove, not touching, not at first, just near enough to share warmth without naming it. The children slept early, worn down by cold and quiet. Mara mended, stitched, patched. Ethan cleaned his rifle, though it was already clean. One night, as the storm battered the walls hard enough to make the rafters groan, Sam spoke up. Why don't they like us? He asked. The question hung there, fragile. Mara froze. Ethan looked at the boy, then at the fire. Sometimes, he said carefully, people decide who you are before they ever meet you. Sam frowned. That don't seem fair. No, Ethan said. It ain't. Mara watched Ethan then, really watched him. The way he chose his words like they mattered, like they could wound or heal depending on how they landed. Later that night, after the children slept, Mara spoke. They killed my husband, she said. Ethan didn't interrupt. He borrowed money for seed, she continued. The winter before last was bad. Crops failed. He tried to pay what he could. They said it wasn't enough. Her voice tightened. They came in the night, beat him, left him in the snow. By morning, she stopped. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. They said the debt passed to me, she said. Said the children were collateral. Silence answered her. Outside something cracked, ice shifting under pressure. You don't owe them anything, Ethan said. That's not how they see it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. That's not how I see it either. She looked at him then, really looked, at the lines carved by sun and wind, at the steadiness that didn't ask for gratitude. You don't have to fight them, she said quietly. He met her gaze. I know. But you will. Yes. That night, Ethan slept lighter than usual. 2 days later, the riders returned. This time there were 3. Ethan saw them from the window first, dark shapes against endless white. He felt the weight of it settle into his chest, calm and heavy. Mara, he said, take the kids into the back room. Her face went pale, but she nodded. She gathered them quickly, no panic, just speed. Ethan stepped outside before the riders could reach the door. Snow crunched under his boots. The wind cut sideways. Afternoon, the leader called again. Same voice, same easy cruelty. You were told already, Ethan said. There's no one here for you. The man smiled. Funny thing about debts, they tend to follow. Ethan didn't move. Behind him the cabin stood solid, silent. You plan on dying for strangers? The man asked. Ethan thought of Mara's hands shaking as she stitched, of Sam's question by the fire, of the weight of sleeping children in his arms. They ain't strangers anymore, he said. The man's smile faded. The moment stretched. Guns stayed holstered, for now. Finally, the leader spat into the snow. This ain't over. Ethan nodded. It is for today. They rode off, but not far. He could feel that. That night, Mara stood beside him at the window. They won't stop, she said. I know. She swallowed. Then what do we do? Ethan looked out at the white swallowing the land, winter pressing in from all sides. We endure, he said, until they can't. Her breath hitched. And if winter ends first? He turned to her. Then we leave. Her eyes searched his face. With us? With you, he said. The words settled between them, quiet and heavy and real. Outside, the storm raged on. Winter did not loosen its grip. It tightened. The storm broke 2 days later, not gently, but all at once, wind tearing across the valley, snow falling so thick it erased distance itself. The world shrank to the space between the cabin walls and the breath in a man's chest. Ethan woke before dawn to the sound of the door rattling, not wind, hands. He was on his feet before thought could catch up, rifle in hand, boots already laced. Mara was awake too. Sitting upright on this bed, the children pulled close around her like a living shield. Her eyes met his in the dim light. No words. None needed. The knocking came again. Harder. Ethan Cole, a voice called through the wood. We know you're in there. Ethan exhaled slowly and stepped forward, positioning himself between the door and the family. You're a long way from town, he called back. Road's near impassable. A laugh. Cold, familiar. So is debt. Snow hissed against the walls. Somewhere a horse snorted. Ethan opened the door just enough to step outside, closing it firmly behind him. 3 men stood there, faces half hidden by scarves and frost. The leader's eyes were sharp, satisfied. You had your warning, the man said. Ethan planted his boots. So did you. The wind howled. For a moment, it seemed like the land itself was listening. The first shot cracked the silence. Ethan moved as the sound tore the air, dropping, rolling, returning fire not to kill, but to scatter. Snow exploded where bullets struck, white turning violent. A horse reared. One man shouted. The fight was brief. Winter made cowards out of men who didn't belong to it. They retreated, two dragging the third, who limped badly now, leaving a dark trail in the snow. Ethan stood there long after they vanished, breath heaving, ears ringing. Inside, Mara waited. He came back in slowly, closing the door behind him, bolting it this time. It's over, he said. She stared at him, searching for blood, for damage. They won't come back, he added. Not this winter. Her knees gave out then. She sat heavily on the bed, one hand covering her mouth. The children clung to her, frightened but unharmed. Ethan knelt in front of her, lowering himself so his eyes met hers. I should have said this sooner, he said, but I didn't want to promise what I couldn't keep. Her breath shook. Say it now. When the thaw comes, he said, we'll go west, together. I know a place, quiet. No debts follow that far. She nodded slowly, tears finally spilling over. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. That night, they slept closer than before, not touching at first, then gradually, instinctively. The children between them, warmth shared, fear easing. Weeks passed, snow softened, days lengthened, the sky lightened its hold. When the first hint of thaw came, a drip from the roof, a crack in the ice along the creek, Ethan felt it like a promise kept. They packed what little they had, left nothing behind worth stealing. The cabin stood empty again, as it always had been meant to be. Just a place, not a home. On the morning they left, Mara stood outside, breathing in the cold one last time. I don't know what waits, she said. Ethan mounted his horse, then turned back to her. I can carry them all, he said again. Whatever comes. She smiled then, not tired, not afraid. They rode west as winter loosened its grip, leaving behind snow and debt and fear, carrying only what mattered. And for the first time in a long while, the road ahead did not feel like a scar. It felt like a beginning.